Francesca Oliveira. I'm the technical design principal at SOM. I work out of the San Francisco studio, but get to participate both locally on the West Coast and firm-wide in all things technical design. Mentoring is an extremely important part of our career as architects, and I have to say I truly feel that I've been defined by those that I have been mentored and am still being mentored by. For me personally, I think mentoring starts really even in the classroom, and all of the professionals that donate their time to teach at universities and to really share their professional experience with emerging professionals and interested students in architecture or related fields. It then continues in with the kind of journeymanship and apprenticeship that has been the hallmark of the industry, and is a sacred trust that we as architects pass from one generation to another. And so for me personally, I had a lot of strong mentors very early on in the process, a design principal, a technical design principal, people that I'm still friends with today, 25 plus years later, and still, seek counsel and advice from. And those relationships that we make with our mentors become really the hallmark of where you go in your career and help open doors or guide you toward the right path as you kind of evolve in that instance. At SOM particularly, we actually are very interested in mentorship and have started a program called Year One, where we actually help specifically the emerging professionals transition from an academic environment into the workplace. Something that's actually one of the hardest barriers to entry in the profession is really trying to demystify what it is to be a professional by giving you exposure to the partners and the principals, exposure to job sites, working all of different typologies, so a lot of hands-on mentorship within that program in order to just facilitate onboarding into the profession. And our hope is maintaining these architects within the profession, because that is something that we have seen in recent years, that architects, as they start, they may graduate from school, maybe not enter the profession, or if they enter in the profession, they don't necessarily stay long term. They get seduced away by other varying competing markets, which I think we as a profession need to make sure that we're focusing on, making sure that we are building and developing the next generation of architects for the future. And that's part of a pay it forward mentality that we have to have as individuals, and I know that SOM inspires to do. When we're reviewing candidates and looking at emerging professionals, part of it is you have to look for who they are, right? Through the drawings that they put forth in their portfolios, through the craft of their resume, you start to see who is their inner personality, who are they as our future architect or a current architect. And you are looking for someone who is genuine, curious, thorough and hardworking, takes pride in what they've shared, and really has crafted and says, this is through my resume and my portfolio, this is who I am, and I can see that it jumps off the page. You just see how they think and how they operate, and does that thinking and that rigor and that process and craft that they shared in presenting themselves align with the philosophies of the firm. And so we're really looking for how you think and who you are and how that exhibits itself through your submission. It's less about skills in this regard. While skills we appreciate and we do look at what skills you come in with, those can be developed through mentorship within the firm. But we can't teach you to be curious. You have to bring that to the table yourself. And I'm certainly, with all of SOM's innovations over the years, we like to be curious. There's a very critical key with inclusivity of diverse ideas within the hiring of architects. Ideas particularly, right? It's not about the box that you come in. In fact, that's immaterial to the situation. It's about where your mind is and where your heart is and where your passions are. And a lot of that comes from maybe your circumstances and where you grew up and what you lived through in your life, and what you bring and share with those experiences genuinely with the profession and with your clients and with your projects. And that diversity of thinking is where we get innovation. So you need different thinkers at the table that have had different experiences, and so that they can bring alternate ideas or alternate viewpoints to get not only a good solution, but a great solution, and perhaps one that we may not have tried before. And so that diversity of thinking allows you to get diversity of ideas and solutions, and ultimately leads to innovation. So at SOM, we've actually adjusted our career framework to take into account career paths that are both generalists in a traditional sense of practice, but also specialists and focus, and allowing any varietal in between. And so we've actually changed how we look at the framework of our paths for our staff to give multiple options to go forward, because each has a value set. There's a value of having a project architect, an architect that can do design, technical design, project management, the three legs of what we call the architectural stool at SOM. And there's also a value to having a specialist, especially particularly as we move forward with the complexity and speed with which we are building and crafting. We do need a value of specialists in order to be able to answer critical questions that need that level of experience and specificity, particularly in enclosures, in the future with AI, and really thinking about BIM components and how we build what we build together. It's going to take a new level of thinking. And this is particular we've seen recently with specialists in LCA analysis. If we had asked ourselves as a profession 10 years ago, do we need this project or this job description within our own firms? I don't think anyone would be able to actually define what an LCA was. And yet today, we have those specialists on staff. And so as the profession continues to evolve, there's a place for both career paths. And I actually encourage that as emerging professionals come into the profession, they try a little bit of everything. You gotta dabble, you have to see if you enjoy it, if you like it, where's your passions, and trust your instinct and go towards those directions. You will find that where you believed you started is likely where you may go, but you also may be surprised along the way, and leaving yourself open to those possibilities is really critical. Whether it's a generalist or a specialist, there's a place for you within this profession, and we need you as architects. Technology is going to play a fascinating role within our profession moving forward, and so I encourage all young architects, especially those even still in school, learn as much about this field as possible and bring that knowledge base to the profession, because I think we desperately need you and your expertise to help us craft what this is going to mean moving forward. There's a lot of talk in the industry right now about AI and what we're going to do with artificial intelligence. Will it put us as architects at risk? I actually say challenge accepted. There's a lot of things that we do in the profession that are rote and that we actually could benefit from a computer aiding in our ability to be able to solve rote tasks. But there is not a moment that I can perceive where a computer will replace what an architect does. There's no easy input to define delight. That's something that is a very intuitive feeling that you have, or sense that you have about a space or how you move through it or the way light is captured, that I'm not sure that we could quantify in a simple zeros and one input in a way that a computer could define that for us. So I actually think it's going to be an exciting synergy of a computer aiding us in the tasks that are more efficient in terms of iteration and a rote solving of a problem, with the combination and lens of then an architect looking at those options and those iterations and saying, now where is the delight? What is fit for purpose in that unquantifiable way that we as humans just have instinctually? So I'm very excited for the future. Communication is critical in architecture. So we'll have to start with communication of ourselves to each other within the team, right? Making sure that you can articulate using the appropriate form of communication, which I know for some of the emerging professionals, the phone is scary. I promise you it's not, and it will be a great asset to you in your career. But you have to use the right tool for the right form of communication. And so I think challenging all of ourselves to make sure that we're thinking through what communication means are we using is really critical. Whether it be a quick question that we use on a messaging software internally so that we can get answers quickly and efficiently. If it's an email where you need to formally document what you have. Is it a phone call? Because you have to make sure that we've clarified something before we respond in writing, because often things are taken out of context, right? All of those terms of communications going even to meeting in person and reviewing a set of drawings, specs, materials, that you have to use all the tools in your arsenal, which is very critical. With that being said, being communication, this is internal to each other, and that then becomes important with clients and with authorities having jurisdiction and fire marshals and all of the next steps in the process as you gain leadership as a professional. And the key to the communication is not only talking, it's listening and making sure that you have heard what your clients or your fire marshal are saying, and you take that into account and try to consider from their point of view, why is that information being given to you or that direction being asked of? What does that then mean for the design and how you need to listen and then apply through that communication? And Mari, I will let you in on one secret. I actually ran into this challenge of communication when I was an emerging professional myself. I had just passed the exams. I'd been working, I was licensed at 25, I was working 2 years and running teams and not understanding what the clients were saying. They made comments like, I have to move it from the capital to the operating. And I was like, what are you talking about? I am listening and I don't know what this means. And I went back to school and I actually went back for an MBA. And with that business degree, it has been much more clear to me what is being communicated, especially from our clients from a financial point of view. And honestly, it helps me be a better architect because I understand now where they're coming from and from the client side what their restraints are, and can bring a different lens to the design that I do because of better communication that truthfully I went back to school for. People can learn that over time and experience, but given that I was running teams at 27, it was something I needed to go back for the little elbow grease of education for, and honestly it's made all the difference. I like to say that was the best $50,000 I spent in my whole life. Collaboration comes in a lot of different formats within SOM. We, again, try to always use the right tool for the right instance. Traditional hand drawing with trace happens a lot. We certainly love our Prismacolor pencils and our trace moving around the studio. And we then take that same idea, and especially with some of the teams that do have remote participants, where we're taking that same philosophy and using digital-based programs that allow for online sketching, and so that we can still sketch together even though it's virtual in some instances. Similarly with drawing sets, we collaborate a lot on sessions with PDF where we can actually draw and write together and receive comments not only from clients or authorities having jurisdiction, and yet there's still that value of printing it out and seeing it in the 2D black and white of how it's going to be reviewed through the permitting process to make sure that we have looked at the situation in a holistic way. You see sometimes something different when you print it versus what's just on the screen. So trying to use each of the tools in our arsenal, it's been additive with technology. And I think that's an important thing to realize. There's still folks that hand draw, inclusive of myself, in the office. And we value the right tool for the right situation. And so as technology has evolved, we've just simply added the tools and been able to be more efficient in certain areas of what we do using the different tools. As an early professional, I would say be curious in the early parts of your career and making sure that you've tried a little bit of everything. Allow yourself to be surprised in what you are maybe interested in or what you try. It's not always what you've seen when you start. You make a lot of assumptions, I think, as a student, and the actual profession. It's a little different than you realize, and there's no way you could ever teach that in school. It's something that you just have to experience. So being curious and allowing for that delight to happen. I think connecting with your community is really critical. It's something that I have always valued throughout my career, and I've always participated in the AIA through some level or another, because your connection with your community and the network that you create only strengthens who you are, and that your experiences as an architect get shaped by those different connections that you have, whether it be the opportunity for a new job or relocating to a new place or hearing about a new piece of technology, that there's a strength within the network that you create in that sense of community. And it's a way to give back and to pay it forward. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to mentor and guide you in your early career, and that's another means that as you develop and become, are able to then contribute back to the next generation of architects in that way. So there is going to be a shift inherently because there is a difference across the generations. Right now, the current workforce that we have within the architectural profession is predominantly Generation X and Generation Y. We're just starting to see Generation Z coming in to the profession as emerging professionals. What's going to be interesting is that through the different generations, there's a different approach to the work that happens. So particularly Generation X has a lot of curiosity, a lot of questions, and I guess as a Generation X, that's why I'm suggesting that piece that resonates to me. We question a lot of things. We want to know why something is done. Generation Z is very curious and wants to know what the purpose is of what we do. And so there's this incredible synergy that we're going to start to have of people questioning, in the leadership saying, why are we doing this? And Generation Z saying, but the purpose of it is important. And how do we find that right blend and nexus? And a challenge to Generation Z. One other thing that we're seeing is that as we move through the generations within the studio, the Generation Y and Generation Z do tend to stay a shorter period of time within a firm. Now, it's important to remember it does take a couple of years to build a building. And if you do not get the benefit of seeing the fruits of your labor built, you're prone to repeat a mistake that you may have made because you would not have had the benefit of that feedback loop to yourself about where you could have improved a detour. How did a contractor interpret what you drew? Did you get your design intent? So I actually encourage Generation Y and Z particularly to stay with it in the firms that you're with. See your buildings built. First of all, it's an incredible learning process, and it's also one of the most rewarding parts of our jobs when you know that you had that initial 5-line sketch on the back of a napkin at lunch because you had this brilliant idea that it was 3 buildings instead of 4 in this master plan. And then when you go walk the site and see the end users experiencing the building the way you conceived of it, that's a powerful moment. And if you don't stay at a firm long enough, you don't enjoy that delight of the act of creation that you've been part of. And so I really do encourage the emerging professionals to think through seeing their buildings from thought all the way to reality. Hiring good talent is an item that the profession is going to specifically have to face in the coming years. We're seeing as a trend right now, NCARB's records are showing an increase in architectural graduates very, very modestly over the past decade, but we're not seeing resultantly those graduates coming into the profession. So we have to ask ourselves why. First, why are they not coming into a traditional architecture firm? Are they going to alternate fields? Are there other fields that have seen the value of that architectural education and are trying to utilize it in different ways? Once an emerging professional is in the profession, we're also seeing staff kind of exploring different opportunities in different professions. So architecturally, we need to consider, I think as a whole industry, how are we going to continue getting in new thought leaders, new future leaders in the profession, and that they remain within the profession, because there is still, unfortunately, that learning curve, that it takes time to grow as an architect. I heard it said while I was in school that the Young Architect Award is for somebody who's 40. You're young at 40, and that you really don't hit your stride as a professional until you're in your 50s and 60s. And so there's a perceived barrier to entry because of that time it takes to understand what is an incredibly complex field. And I would encourage the emerging professionals to seek the joy of discovery, and that just as you think you really understand it and you have your arms around it and you fully are an architect, allow that life is going to show you the next layer of the onion and the next layer of complexity in what we do. It almost, for me personally, has always been about a 5-year cycle. So I'm just about due at the 25-year marker. So I'm looking forward to the next unraveling of the next layer of the puzzle of architecture. And it's something to take joy in. And it's certainly a profession where you're never going to be bored. You're going to continue learning for the rest of your life. And honestly, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.